Kendrick Lamar is not influential. Generic as it may sound, my top two favorite artists are Kendrick and Kanye, and this hasn't changed for about half a decade. The way I would describe Kendrick's music is perfecting the craft, and the way I would describe Kanye's music is boundary pushing, extreme, and influential. Going all the way back to Kanye's roots, although he didn't really invent chipmunk soul, he pushed the limits of what sampling of voice could be, and now it is completely part of the identity of hip-hop. You will hear older legends like Nas and Jay-Z rap over these soul beats, and the newer underground scene thrives on a mixture of experimental sounds and drum beats, while also reimagining what chipmunk soul could sound like. Kanye's career is so big that he's one of the most relevant rappers to even come out of the bling era with an incredibly celebrated and vibrant album, Graduation. We also know about how much his 808s and Heartbreak album completely changed the route hip-hop would take in the 2010s, mentoring the biggest artists such as Drake and Travis Scott and also influencing the whole autotune and SoundCloud era. Not to mention, most people's best features are when they work with Kanye. Now, this is a video on Kendrick Lamar, not Ye. But the reason why I went on a tangent was to describe how far-reaching Kanye's music is in comparison to Kendrick's. Going back to what I said earlier, how I would describe Kendrick's music isn't influential but rather perfecting the craft. His Section 80 debut was a flurry of conscious rhymes from someone who was hungry to be the best MC. He was a young rapper who could tell stories, change flow, sing a good hook, and smith out the best use for every word in each of his songs. He was influenced by the jazz beats and other lyrical talents like Eminem. Going on to Good Kid, Mad City, Kendrick continues to perfect his craft with one of the best storytelling concept albums of all time. He brings you in with cold dark beats on terrain and lifts you up with backseat freestyle. Makes you feel in a sexy mood
respect you too. Here's 10K, I'm in a sexy mood
with Poetic Justice, gets you wilding out with Mad City, and makes you contemplative with Sing About Me, I'm Dying of Thirst. Not to mention all of the interludes between the songs that collectively tell their own story. Clearly, he takes influence from his roots, the West Coast G-Funk scene, but also storytelling masterpieces like Illmatic. To Pimp a Butterfly is the next installment, and again we see conscious political hip-hop at full display with jazz at its core. He brought in amazing funk artists like George Clinton and Thundercat, and amazing production from some of the best in the game, Pharrell, Flying Lotus, and Soundwave. When we thought the writing and art of hip-hop couldn't get any better, Kendrick continued to deliver and compete with himself in order to surpass those limits. This album is a tribute to the culture of hip-hop and all of its previous influences. Damn. The reception and magnitude of this conscious but pop album was much like Kanye's third. From bangers like Humble and DNA to slower songs like Love and God, to some of the most brutally in-your-face storytelling songs like Duckworth, this album is another example of perfection for its time. It was an album to be dissected by expert writers, and it has bangers for casual listeners in clubs and TikTok. Most recently, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers is probably the most left-field album in his discography, but he does the same thing. In the 2020s, hip-hop's landscape has changed. Hip-hop is in an awkward stage where it doesn't quite know where it wants to be. There are still phenomenal artists dropping true hip-hop albums like J.I.D. and Denzel Curry. There are people who are trying to bring in new sounds like Travis Scott and Scaring the Hoes, and there are also experimental underground artists that poke around with other sounds. So with all of this freedom and wiggle room, Kendrick again went out of his own way to make an album that strongly touches on every piece subgenres of hip-hop has had this decade. He has singing, sampling, reversing voices, skits, interludes, different instruments, great features, introspective topics, and the concept of a double album. He even goes out of his way to experiment on his own with a song like We Cry Together. After going through his whole discography, did you even think of another album that Kendrick inspired? Not really, right? I'm sure you see what I mean now. If anything, Baby Keem influenced Kendrick on Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. A lot of the sounds you hear throughout the album match perfectly with the atmosphere Keem has on his own projects. There's definitely mutual collaboration between the two, but I see the influence of Keem shining brightly in Kendrick's album, rather than the other way around. People decorate Kendrick Lamar as one of the greatest alive, if not the greatest of all time, because he is so good at hip-hop. But he's not so much a figure that redefines the boundaries of what the art can be. Kendrick has been on so many big songs since his career started, and he always brings his best effort, but he remains in the confines of what hip-hop is currently defined as. The only two features I can think of in recent memory that had Kendrick change things up was Goosebumps and Mona Lisa.
Top of the morning, top of the morning, top of the morning, top of the...
And even then, the only thing he's really doing is changing certain inflections of his voice, and they don't seem to have great influence, only critical reception. Changing perspectives, here are some more examples of how hip-hop has changed due to other people's careers. MF Doom was one of the first people to really define what abstract hip-hop could be. He didn't rap about typical subjects in hip-hop because he had different artistic goals in mind. We see him and Madlib create an entire world and set of characters in their debut solo albums and have them join together in Madvillainy. These characters even continue to reoccur in future works. MF Doom is also the prime candidate for influencing the entire hip-hop scene to rap quote-unquote offbeat. Instead of always exactly following the drum pattern, he has his own flow, and the beat pattern only complements his rapping. You see the same thing with Earl Sweatshirt, Billy Woods, Griselda, Mike, and every other drumless type of rapper. Even Playboi Carti has had his hand in creating a whole new genre of music since his long-awaited third project, Whole Lotta Red. Although people wanted Dial It 2 and leaks from Whole Lotta Red version 1 were so good, with proper direction and guidance from someone like Kanye, he was able to freely choose his own path and essentially create a new genre of hip-hop, rage. His entire label Opium, which features artists like Ken Carson and Destroy Lonely, basically make lower quality versions of Carti songs. Yeat's entire career has been capitalizing on the sound, and even Drake recently had a collaboration with Yeat on a rage beat that Carti influenced. With the success of Whole Lotta Red, a producer like Filthy is now a major asset in the hip-hop community when he wasn't as well known before. Even someone like Chief Keef really changed the scene for what hip-hop could be in the 2010s. Drill music in Chicago was one of the most violent, outrageous, and maybe controversial eras of hip-hop because it strayed from the formula of pop and went more bare-bones aggression and violence. The experiences of these young rappers on O Block are put into the light with little to no filter, and audiences loved it. This movement garnered a lot of attention in the media as people were scared of what the music would do to influence younger and impressionable kids, but failed to address the issues that even made this type of music in the first place. The debates weren't about better education, less redlining, and other racist policies in the system, but instead why hip-hop is evil. Going back, I want to address the Melodic Blue and Kendrick's role in influencing Baby Keem and his new label, pgLang. I already said that it seems like the opposite, where Keem is more influential to Kendrick than Kendrick is to Keem. I think in the 2020s, Kendrick wants to continue his path as a musician, but it seems like he wants to have more fun rather than take everything so seriously. He's also at a point in his career where he could retire, but based on the subject matter of Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers and his collaborations with his cousin Baby Keem, he doesn't seem to want to slow down. Rather, he wants to redefine who he is in the industry, and Baby Keem is the prime candidate to test his mentorship abilities. In their most recent collab, when you hear a song like The Hillbillies, you can't help but laugh and get in a goofy mood. And this is the exact appearance Kendrick wants to broadcast to the world. Although he is in a mentorship position for his young cousin, he also treats him like an equal and guides him in his creative journey. He's having fun, and he's trying to bring out newer producers like Evil Gianni into the mix, which can influence the popularity of the genre of sample drill. Like I mentioned before, the landscape of hip-hop in the 2020s is complicated. Lots of people think the genre is dying, as the most prominent and popular subgenres like trap are slowing down and quality is declining. With artists changing up their styles, Kendrick has so much opportunity right now to capitalize on a sound and influence the next generation of hip-hop. Thanks for watching this video. If you like what I had to say, if you agree, if you disagree, please leave a comment down below, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.